I definitely didn't have Skyrim modding hitting new peaks at the start of 2022 on my bingo card, but yet here we are, looking at some of the most ambitious mods coming to Skyrim, posting massive updates on their progress. These quite literally being the biggest mods ever created for a Bethesda game. We have some pretty special updates around them and even a few surprises. And there are several of these to look at today, the first of which is Skyblivion. Skyblivion, of course, being a remake and in some ways an update to Oblivion. They just recently shared a new development diary. This thing is incredibly well produced. The various video shots, the commentary comes together really well here. One of the first things they show off during this is some updated goblins coming with Skyblivion. They've done a phenomenal job at updating and upgrading their look, but maintaining the Oblivion spirit. And that, of course, is going to be critical when you really want to pull on that nostalgia. And you can see with some of the goblin outfits and armor, they took what was there with Oblivion and added further details and intricacies to them. The Goblin Warlord is a clear example of this, more comprehensive and better looking armor. I also think it's a really cool addition to add rats to the Goblin Shaman's armor. And overall, the addition of little trinkets to the goblins makes it feel like they really do have their own culture. They are living in this world also. They describe how goblins will occupy that familiar role of raiders and just an overall menace in Cyrodiil, as well as, of course, the various goblin tribes will be making a return, but this too is where the details really show, as they've made it just way more obvious which goblin tribe a certain goblin is a part of. The visual differentiations between one goblin tribe to another are now much clearer. I really love some of the edits they made around this and just some of the details that are added to make them feel like they really are a part of something larger. And I like this mentality of it not just being a pure recreation, but actually adding in upgrades where it makes sense, where they feel natural and work really well. They talk a bit about 3D asset recreation, as the project, of course, does have to recreate literally every object from Oblivion. They show off how some of the structural objects are being remade, like how Leyawiin alone has 111 separate pieces that were remade for it, and even further, how they have actually already completed creation of most of these 3D objects, which is a phenomenal feat. You take for granted little things like plants or shells, but those are critical and still must be painstakingly remade for projects like this. They show off some of the work done on the Imperial City, which they are currently working on, and ask for anyone interested with skills in architectural development to apply to join the team. And beyond that, though, we get a brief look at some of the weapons and clothing that will appear in Skyblivion, and this is where things get really cool. There's a large variety here with clothes from the wealthy citizens to the more modest townfolk, and even just some of the lower class people you'll find on the outskirts. The outfits here are following that same theme of looking good but having upgrades from Oblivion, and some of these look really quite great. There are a few quick cuts to some of the weapons being developed, but also a beautiful chest featuring all kinds of unique quest reward items, and these look really special. The standout one to me being the Grey Aegis. In Oblivion, the Grey Aegis is a shield to pop up during the arena fight, and it is largely unobtainable by the player unless you're using exploits or console commands. But some of these unobtainable items are going to be obtainable with Skyblivion and balanced accordingly, and I gotta say, this one looks absolutely amazing. They really took this as an opportunity to upgrade and make this something special, and I think it absolutely shows. This shield looks absolutely phenomenal. But the upgrades will apply elsewhere also. You can see the Bow of Eternal Frost having these really well done visual effects, as well as it'll still feature disappearing arrows after you finish somebody off. Artifacts are going to be a big part of Skyblivion, and they're going to be one of the major points where things are going to be improved. They're taking these weapons and overhauling them when necessary from a visual standpoint, and from what we've seen thus far, they will really stand out now among other items in Skyblivion. But they're also going to make sure these artifacts truly feel special. Take, for example, Umbra. There's going to be all new visual effects as you collect with Umbra. These look great and honestly better than pretty much anything I've seen, even among released Skyrim mods for a long while now. This easily makes it one of the coolest weapons I've seen for Skyrim. They give us a look at some of the other artifacts that are on the way. And you can even just see here, for example, how they're adding in this special ground smashing effect for this massive blunt weapon. And although, yes, we are looking at an incredibly well done and well edited video, compare what you have here to what you had in Oblivion, yeah, one of these just feels far more special where it should. Gold brand is also shown off. It's gained by taking out 9 others in a tournament of combat, and you'll have the ability to set enemies on fire on hit, as well as this new ranged flame attack. This is just awesome, and from a visual perspective, the Skyblivion Gold Gold brand does look like a nice sized upgrade over the recently added Skyrim Gold brand from Anniversary Edition. And when you add that flame effect on top of it, there really is no competition between what Bethesda just added officially and what Skyblivion is adding in the future. They show off Bruma pretty extensively, this of course being a pretty familiar place for many of us as we did get to experience it from the separate project with Beyond Skyrim Bruma, but of course here we're seeing it at the much earlier time of Oblivion with all of its facilities working and the extensive re-implementation of shops and interactions. Looks phenomenal, both from the external but in particular some of the internal shots going over the walls and detailed architecture. It feels special seeing these shots of a town coming together completely, having the NPCs, having the interactions, and like it is already a living, working town. And even towards the end of the development diary overall, they do have a bit of a teaser there of perhaps what's to come. Overall, this is looking absolutely phenomenal. It gets me very excited to get to experience some of this content one day. But of course, as always, if we're talking about Skyblivion, we also are going to need to highlight Skywind, which in a similar vein is going to be the Morrowind remake mod as a sister project to Skyblivion, which has also had a few updates over the past couple of months. They've shared a whole host of new in-game images of work being done on both interior and exterior locations as they rebuild Morrowind overall, and definitely some of these have some upgrades. The Daedric Ruin tile set has been recreated. They'll use this to build out some of the various ruins and describe how back in Morrowind, this set only contained 7 set-in-stone tower pieces, while this newly recreated one has 84 tower pieces these world builders will be able to choose from. They share a render of Imperial Silver armor, and this is where things just really feel special to me. This degree of upgrade just feels absolutely insane. And it has this pretty cool aspect where you can see, of course, the comparison of Morrowind to Skywind, but even cooler to me in a way is you can actually see the concept art this is based off of, and really how accurate a representation the concept art was to what we now have as the 3D model. Seeing this continuation of the actual original, the design process of conceptualizing it, and then also actually creating it just looks really, really cool. It's an awesome insight into the development here. They show a quick image of the Ebony Spear and how they are re-implementing spears as well, in addition to some of the other armors and outfits that are being added in. But best of all is seeing it all come together in their recent exploration video of an ancestral tomb. This really showcases how much of an upgrade they are bringing to the actual gameplay of Morrowind. The tomb looks phenomenal, and you can see all of that unique architecture and those tile sets actually being put into use. And more importantly, at least in my opinion, the exploration itself goes to another level in this remake compared to the original, which definitely feels like it'll be one of the big upgrades with this experience overall. Let's look at the 2 remake projects and some of the major progress they've been making as of late. But something else I do want to highlight is, of course, Beyond Skyrim, the other really large-scale project on the way. I always see a lot of confusion. What's the difference between Skyblivion and Beyond Skyrim, or Skywind and Beyond Skyrim? Beyond Skyrim is this incredibly unique and cool concept of basically just extending the world border of Skyrim, giving you the entirety of Tamriel as a place to explore, and you could literally just go from one section to another, all of it being at the time of Skyrim. So you get to re-experience Morrowind, but at the time of Skyrim. And just recently they shared a bunch of updates on all of the various projects and world spaces they are working on. They showcased the lush jungles and foreign creatures of Argonia, formerly known as Beyond Skyrim Black Marsh. Some of the 3D objects being created here really do a good job at giving this place its own identity, including some concept weapons that will later be introduced, with special weapons for the Barsabic Aliads, who worship the Aedra, but due to religious differences did split from their Daedric worshipping cousins in Cyrodiil. One of the most haunting of all are these zombies that are coming. Flesh flies will infest a host and turn them into a full functional flesh fly zombie. These things look terrifying and are incredibly well designed. They dive a bit into the culture of elsewhere. We get to look at Akeljit beer, which I really love, but also some of the mist clutter of the region. From there, they show off some of the concept art for charcoal warriors. These guys are called in dire times, and of course will paint themselves with charcoal. They fight until the reason they were summoned in the first place is taken care of. They share several other aspects of this developing culture, and it gets me excited to experience somewhere a bit more unique and novel compared to some of the other regions we will get to explore. Although, speaking of, we also do do have the very unique and novel area of Roscria, featuring rock scrapers, a new creature found as Roscrians dug into the mithril mines. We can also see the initial implementation of NPCs into Roscria, which is going to be made up from citizens all across the Empire. I know though, there's a lot of unique and novel under the Beyond Skyrim umbrella. There's also the familiar, and then we have a look at Morrowind, with some of the best landscape shots I feel like they've shown off thus far and that we've really highlighted in this video. These look absolutely incredible. This image of the Red Mountain is pretty cool because, well, on one hand it just looks amazing, like I've said, but we can also compare this to Bethesda's own takes with both Arena, Skyrim, and even ESO. Seeing the evolution of the Red Mountain here is pretty cool. But then we have what is the most well-known and documented with Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil, aka getting to experience the world space of Oblivion, but set at the time of Skyrim, so several hundred years after the events of Oblivion. We get several landscape shots and some of the various structures they have recreated to describe how they recently overhauled Fort Blueblood, but perhaps most notable of all in Oblivion is Imperial City. And it shared how since the events of Oblivion, the Imperial City has grown and now actually goes beyond its walls. You could find changes to the surrounding area as a result. They further describe how nearly all of the towns other than Imperial City are now in the stage of interior design. Many of these towns are already pretty well established and designed in the world, so now they're moving on to the actual interiors of those places. And they share off these really cool images of comparing what is being done in Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil to what is actually done in Oblivion. Oblivion being on the right. And last but not least, we get some overview terrain shots of both Iliac Bay as well as at Mora. Iliac Bay has this really great example of diversity of environments, while at Mora is going to be a completely unique experience focusing more on the survival in such a harsh environment and finding new foes in this region. But overall, that's a good highlight and recap of some of the more recently shared images, details, and video by some of these major mod projects, really the biggest projects on their way to Skyrim right now. Hopefully you guys found this one informative. I actually have a couple of additional Skyrim videos planned for the next couple of weeks, including some pretty special mods that are on the horizon. With that said, as always again, I thank you all for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.